All right, hello and welcome everybody. I'm Toby Smith. I'm in for David Asman this week. Fox Business Alert. We can report tonight the science of climate change is now all but settled. Yes, friends and neighbors. And the global warming alarmists have been dealt a wee bit of a blow, right? CERN, C-E-R-N, one of the world's largest and most prestigious centers for scientific research, has concluded that it's the sun's rays, not human activity, which controls the Earth's climate. Now that, of course, is horrible news for the greenies, who've used, for years, questionable science to justify more and more regulations against fossil fuels like coal and oil, all the while arguing for more and more and more federal subsidies for the renewable energy sources they just love so dearly. So are the Greens prepared to back down now that the science has proved them wrong? And what about the cost of continually funding green energy while at the same time regulating the hell out of fossil fuels, which we have in abundance? All right, so for more on this landmark study, we're joined by Chris Horner of the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Chris, never be to argue with science, but the meticulousness that CERN used here and the time element involved to prove, without any other variables, that it was the Earth warming. How are the greenies going to get out of this one?
Well, you nailed that in your summary until your question, will they back down? And I think that misses the faith-based aspect of this. They are not willing to admit there is anything that deserves. Let me put it to you this way. This is the latest in a series of episodes in the scientific realm that is parallel to those we found in the legal realm, trying to use the Freedom of Information Act and other things, that when the global warming industry says, oh, nothing to see here, if you insist on looking why you're very bad people and you think the moon landing was faked, you probably ought to keep looking and pressing harder, because this is, as you noted, an ultra-establishment outfit. It wasn't just an experiment, though it was an experiment. It was an experiment affirming prior published work and another experiment, all of which, by the way, flies in the face of an ongoing experiment we have. The global warming theory is premised in computer models, and the experiment outside the window proves them wrong every year. Well, so they've got a real problem. But no, they're not going to back off. Well, you know the trillions involved here? Right.
I mean, remember, there's 8,000 scientists. Every Nobel scientist in the world, according to these guys, has signed a document that says that the global warming is caused by man. How could those 8,000 people be wrong?
Yeah, well, the number is variable, and the body count tends to drop when you ask for scrutiny. For example, they cite the UN IPCC. Their website says we don't perform any scientific research. That's a big red flag. The world's leading climate scientist there is a railway engineer. These 2,000 leading scientists are anthropology teaching assistants, chemists, a lot of economists, by the way, from Cuba, and others who say this is about de facto redistributing the world's wealth. That's their chief economist, Otto Edenhofer. So it's not cracked up, this scientific consensus, which is why they have to organize to try to block this. You know how long it took to get this cloud experiment going, and Svensmark and Friis Christensen in Denmark had proceeded on their own and were barely recognized here. This is a grave threat to the biggest gravy train big science and, frankly, big academia had seen in decades. They're not just going to raise their hands and say, you know what, we were wrong.
Right, Chris, I wrote a book on this a couple years ago, and it was intriguing to me that if you took also volcanoes, I mean, the years where we had massive volcano explosion, you had all the sulfur that went in the air, and that changed climate because of volcanoes. The green guys say those volcanoes had nothing to do with it. Or I mean, even more bizarre, bovine, cows, everything else they eat goes up in the atmosphere at about 100 times the methane weight of automobiles. If we were really going to make something happen against, quote-unquote, global warming, we'd get rid of cows, wouldn't we?
Well, the chief climate scientist at the IPCC, who is a railway engineer again, has said that's actually a leading argument, because he is a Hindu, and he says that we need to stop eating meat and that would do a lot. But again, we need to stop the horrors of abundant, reliable, affordable energy, automobility, reduced infant mortality, expanded lifespan, reduced disease and drudgery, and so on. Those are all very, very bad things. They even speak about the horrors of indoor sanitation. And I've written about these people. It's not about the climate. This is the latest vehicle, and I quote their chief economist, Otto Edenhofer, for saying it's not about the environment. It's about how we how we de facto redistribute the world's wealth. That is a quote.
I don't know. It always sounds to me like it's like the Taliban. You know, they're going us to go back to the caves and you know, beating up people for a living. I love what you do, Chris, and I want you to stay with us. But speaking of the horrors of affordable energy, Canada now provides more oil to the United States than all the Persian Gulf countries combined, right? Which lessens our dependence on oil from the Mideast, right? Yet environmental groups continue to oppose efforts to expand oil importation from Canada, eh? The proposed Keystone XL pipeline, which would run 1,700 miles from the great province of Alberta to the Gulf Coast, it's been found environmentally safe by the State Department. But every day in D.C., we have the protesters that are rallying in front of the White House, and they're pressuring the president to veto a project that gives us energy independence. Now, of course, actress Daryl Hannah, that renowned global scientist, she's getting arrested today in the process. You see that. So why are the Greens so keen on blocking this, you know, reliable source of energy, even though it comes from literally our biggest ally and neighbor? Maybe liberal radio host Alan Combs knows, because I certainly don't know. Alan?
For a guy who's putting down greens, you got a lot of green. You want to get a green tie, you got a green shirt. I mean, you have no right to wear that clothing if you're going to say the things you're saying.
Flattery will get you everywhere. Answer the question. I mean, Chris was talking about the theology, this theological belief.
It's not theology.
Well, show me a pipeline. I mean, pipelines will rupture. You'll have oil, etc.
Yeah.
But show me look at in Alaska, the actual caribou and all the other animals, they're actually thriving next to the pipelines.
The caribou loves it. Warms them up at night.
Well,
you know, we keep messing with the earth. We keep doing things that are not sustainable. Ultimately, this stuff is not sustainable, rather than focusing on sustainable energy.
What's not sustainable?
And by the way,
what's not sustainable?
Well, you know, continuing to drill, continuing to upset the earth, continuing to upset the environment.
Based on what scientific fact would you say that it's not sustainable to pull the 4 trillion barrels of oil that we have in the world out of the ground?
Fact, look, you want to talk about scientific fact? You're denying global warming here. This is a denying global warming show.
I'm not denying global warming.
You and Chris Horner are talking about. Wait a second. Hold on a second. The issue here isn't whether or not it's man-made or not man-made. It's happening. It's recurring. It actually exists. You want to argue about how it exists or why it exists.
Chris,
you don't even want to deal with the fact that it does exist.
Chris,
this is the Flat Earth Society here tonight.
Alan, you know, Chris, can you actually give him some mathematics? I mean, can you actually, because I mean, he considers CERN, which, by the way, it's always amazing to me that the liberals always say, you know, we have the 12 Nobel scientists who all approved this, but now that the scientists disprove it,
are you a global warming denier?
I am not a denier. I'm a denier that we have some global warming. We've had it for, I think, for 8,000 years,
Chris. The ice caps are melting. They're melting at a higher rate now. The oceans
they were melting in 1582.
The temperature is warming at a higher rate.
Chris,
go ahead. Be in denial, both of you.
Denial is not a river in Egypt. Go
That's
ahead.
right.
Yeah, their best strategy is to make sure that the other viewpoint is not expressed. It goes back to the efforts to block the CERN experiment. Like I said, Alec, thank you for what we've got here is you heard the totality of their argument. To wave their hands yelling denier and Flat Earth Society.
Yes.
Well, that's not actually an argument. This is not a playground. It's not recess, and you're not 5. Let's look at this. The argument is man's causing it. That actually is on the table, and that is why we are proposing energy poverty, energy scarcity, that is pro-poverty policies. If it's not about whether man's doing it, then let's just recognize climate changes. That's what it does, always has, always will. The wealthiest societies adapt best. So you don't impose energy poverty or energy scarcity. But it is, the argument on the table is claiming that the horrors of industrial man is doing it, which is why they're proposing that we ration what drives prosperity, access to abundant, reliable, affordable energy, even when it comes from the great white horde next door.
I'm not just waving my arms around. I'm actually giving you facts. Oceans are rising, temperatures are rising, ice caps are melting.
No, Obama,
and you, by the way,
that.
said trillions are involved. Trillions are involved in the oil and gas industry. Trillions of dollars that think tanks.
That's right, because it actually drives the $58 trillion economy, Alan.
Trillions of dollars are involved in protecting the idea that somehow global warming is not man-made or even doesn't exist. That's where the trillions of dollars are. That's where the money is.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, you know what? You're not giving us facts. Energy companies are underwriting the global warming alarmist movement. I learned this when Enron told me to get the global warming treaty in 1997. And now utilities are promoting this because, as they've admitted to Forbes magazine, the CEO of Exelon, the CEO of American Electric Power said, of course we're behind the global warming movement. We'll make money off of it.
You got it.
So you can't run around screaming industry's paying everybody.
You're making money
No,
off
the
their
doubt is not manufactured.
You're making
The
money.
doubt is not
We can
manufactured.
do this all night.
The science is.
Thanks to Alan. Thanks to Chris. We'll probably see Alan next if I don't kill him. All right, our next guest wants to bring abundant, affordable energy to America. All right, joining us now from Calgary is the CEO of TransCanada Pipelines, Russell Girling, in a Scoreboard exclusive. Mr. Girling, I know you saw Alan give his fervent belief that what you do is inherently evil and uneconomic. So from a businessman standpoint and from a country that is graciously allowing the United States, which produces about 20% of the oil that we need, to use some of yours, can you make a case for us quickly for your pipeline?
Well, I think that's the key. Is the United States needs some imported, 10 million barrels a day of oil, and quite frankly, there's, I think everybody's focused on trying to move to alternative energies and to reduce and conserve as much as possible. But under any scenario, the United States is going to need that amount of imported oil, and getting oil from Canada is, I believe, a far better choice than getting it from places around the globe that don't share the values on environmental stewardship or human rights that the United States has.
Well, sure. I mean, there's another thing I guess people always miss, that normal human beings think that oil is oil, but oil is not oil. Light sweet crude is mostly what 90% of our refineries can use. We can't use heavy oil that's in other parts of the world. And you are delivering us about 1 million barrels, and you will total, and we're going to move to almost 2 million over the next 5 to 8 years from Canada of light sweet crude, which is doubly important to us, correct?
We're actually going to move heavy oils to the United States. The United States does use a considerable amount of imported heavy crude oils. Currently, our customers are using heavy crude oil and refining it in the Gulf Coast, crude oils from both Mexico, Venezuela, and Saudi Arabia, the heavier crudes. And we are going to directly displace those heavier crudes. Our customers have told us that they have terminated their contracts with Venezuela, for example, and have recontracted for heavy crude oils out of Canada. So there's no net increase in heavy oils coming to the United States. Those refineries are already configured to run those heavier slates of crude oil.
So when Daryl Hannah, the eminent world scientist, locks herself to the White House fence, et cetera, and says that your pipeline is going to kill animals, cause world destruction, give people acne, I don't know exactly what he's doing. Does that sort of, I mean, is she really inconsequential? What do you guys say to someone like that?
Well, I think everybody's entitled to their own opinions. What our hope would be is that the organizers of these protests would actually share the facts. And as I said, the facts are Canadian oil sands is going to get developed irrespective of whether or not the United States wants it. So the actual GHG impacts of Canadian development of the Canadian oil sands is about 1/10% of global greenhouse gases. So even if they were successful denying the pipe, and that led to a denial of progress in Canadian oil sands, it wouldn't make one iota of change in global greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, what will probably happen is we'll see the development of the resource occur. We'll see increased tanker traffic off the west coast of Canada and increased tanker traffic off into the Gulf Coast of the United States, actually increasing greenhouse gases. Canadian oil sands is not the largest source of greenhouse gases in the world.
So quickly, we got about 30 seconds. Where are we now? We had some support, some bills were passed, some legislation was passed that would go ahead. When could we have your oil flowing through this pipeline in the United States?
The current plan is to have a decision from the Department of State at the end of the year. If the Department of State concludes positively and issues us the permit, we're ready to start construction in early 2012, probably January or February. We'll put 20,000 U.S. workers to work, and we'll spend $7 billion stimulating the U.S. economy. We're ready to go. We're shovel ready. And
truly shovel ready. By the way, shovel ready is a bad word here in the United States because we don't quite understand it. You actually are shovel ready.
We have the laborers lined up. The pipeline and steel is arriving. The pumps have been manufactured, and we're ready to start construction.
All right. Thank you so much for your time to be with us tonight. It's an important story of us. Now it's time for you to weigh in here. Our vote tonight is this statement: building a Canadian oil pipeline to the United States. If you like it, text 5. If you don't like it, text SELL to 369-249. Now on.